Good evening, Pearl and Andy Lockwood here, Lockwood College Prep, with our first, at least first of the year, and one of our first ever, unscripted open Q&A. Welcome. Just let us know in the chat that you can see and hear us. Hi, Pearl.
Hi, Andy. Hi, everybody.
Cut the small talk. So we just want to make sure that we're coming in loud and clear without any tech issues. Pearl, are you doing your usual very precise disclaimers or pro tips?
Yes.
Okay. So let's see. Yes. Okay. Looks like Michelle Littman, Yanka Rondo, Chris Couch. Hello. You can hear us and see us. Let us know where you're from. That's always fun for us to hear. So here's the deal. This is a little bit different presentation. There's no slide deck, and I successfully dragged Pearl in, made sure we were color coordinated. She did that. By the way, she does that every time.
I think it's like pets and their owners, they start to look alike. There was no planning involved whatsoever,
okay.
But
here's the truth.
Brain osmosis. Oh, blue is the color today. Whatever.
Okay. Right. So, like a lot of times when we go out on the weekends, which is not a lot of times, but generally speaking, I will get ready first because I take about 3 minutes, and I'll go downstairs and sit in the chair, the waiting chair, for Pearl to dash out, stomping, saying we're late. And then I'd say 7 out of 10 times, she's wearing like the exact same outfit as I am, because she's seen, what I'm wearing, and she tries on like 5 or 6 different things. But literally 7 out of 10 times, if I'm wearing a blue shirt and jeans, blue shirt and jeans. Tonight, she came down here to offer her thoughts on her participation tonight. I'll just leave it at that. And I was like, yeah, we're starting soon. She went upstairs, changed, came down, same color. Okay?
Yes, I'm sure that's what everyone here has come to hear tonight.
This is supposed to be about financial aid. Okay.
Sure.
Okay. So I was just waiting for people to get on, just to know. Anyway, so I'm Andy Lockwood. This is Pearl Lockwood. Pearl is a financial aid expert. She files 250, 300 or more financial aid applications each year. Fact or fiction?
Fact.
We are gearing up for the opening of the 22-23 financial aid forums season, which is actually tomorrow.
Minus. Just kidding.
6 hours.
If it actually comes
5
out
hours.
at midnight.
Yeah.
Eastern Standard Time.
Yeah. So what we're doing is we're fielding your questions. I have roughly 60 or so that were pre-submitted. So I'm going to do my best to get, some of them are duplicates. So I'm going to do my best to get through those. We have not prepared anything. Pearl and I are working without a safety net. But if you have questions, in addition to the ones that were pre-submitted, lob them in the chat here, and we will get going. All right. So let's try to do this. Keep this to about an hour. Our answers, let's do our best to keep them soundbitey. But some of this stuff is pretty complicated. So Pearl's very good at explaining things. Just going to state that at the beginning. All right, Pearl.
Really building me up there.
Pearl, you're very good at explaining things.
Thank you.
How is that not building you up? Don't start with me in front of this. This is the first time we're on a webinar together in like a long time. I miss you. All right, here is a question that we got from a few people. I'm going to use Thomas Snyder. Thank you, Thomas, for asking this question. Do early or late or once financials are allocated to provide better aid? Meaning, is there a rush to file? We got a few questions like along the lines of October 1st is when the financial aid applications come out. Should you rush them in? Meaning, is there an advantage to rushing them in? So go ahead, and if you're joining us, by the way, I suggest you enjoy an adult beverage. Pearl, cheers to you.
Cheers to you and you and you and you.
Okay.
Okay. Is there a rush? Is there a rush to get out all your financial aid? Well, okay. Here are the rules of thumb. It is always earlier. It is always better to be earlier and or certainly prior to your priority financial aid deadlines Now, where I have found there is often lots of confusion is in the distinction between admissions deadlines, which are one set of deadlines, and depending on how your child is applying to a school will determine the admissions deadline, early action, early decision, regular decision, depending on the case. And that is entirely distinct from priority financial aid deadlines, which may coincide with the student's application deadline, but often does not. And there's often a panic thinking that, oh my God, everything has to be in by November 1st, for example. That may or may not be true.
Or October 1st.
Or October 1st when it comes out. Or some people have felt that the need to do so already, complete the FAFSA already, which if they've done so prior to midnight tonight or when the 22-23 aid year application comes out on October 1st of 2021, then they would be completing the wrong financial aid application, the wrong year. Essentially, if it was done before today, it would be the financial aid forms for this current school year that we're in, which is probably not the one that they're looking for. They're probably looking for next year if they have a senior now, in high school.
Class of 22.
Class of 2022. Exactly. So answer the question.
Yeah, when should you
your
file?
Student has a list of schools. Let's say your student has 10 schools on their list. And to the extent that any of those schools are being applied for early action, that will likely have a priority financial aid deadline that is a bit earlier. My personal practice is to file to all schools on the list according to your earliest priority financial aid deadline to ensure that all deadlines are met. And that's not really like a something that could, hold back your financial aid. Nobody could hang their hat on saying, well, you weren't on time, so the money's run out. So in order to make sure that you're on time, you have to look up your priority financial aid deadlines and adhere to them. Now, often the question comes up, and I don't know if this is in, but it just begs the question: which form do you file? There's
outside the scope.
Sorry.
Yeah. So let me just.
I have so much to give.
Let me summarize. You do, but that's a different question.
All right.
So.
And we have questions I see coming in the chat.
Yeah. So you do your best to flag them, and then we'll get to them. Right. So the forms are released tomorrow, October 1st. There is no rush to get them in on that day. If you have what Pro was saying is you need to look at your priority financial aid deadlines. If you have, and that's going to vary from school to school. So if you have a November 1st priority financial aid deadline and you get your FAFSA and CSS profile, that could be another form in on October 1st or November 1st, you're not going to get more money or less money, depending on when you submit it, as long as you're on or before your priority deadline. The one exception is if you are a super low income family and you're applying for state aid in one of about 16 states in the country, then it does help to get your FAFSA in on the early side because states run out of money. But in terms of the colleges themselves, they're looking to bribe kids who have the best GPAs and the best SAT or ACT scores to come, and they're going to find money for them in general. There's no rush. In fact, Pearl's practice over the years is to not start filing people who have November 1 deadlines until roughly October 15th or so, right, because there are glitches in the FAFSA frequently, not every year, but the last few years, I think more often than not, there are problems. So we wait rather and let other people sort of
be the guinea pigs.
Yeah, take the fall. Some of those glitches resulted in people's expected family contribution, that's the amount that the government thinks that they can pay, being artificially inflated because retirement accounts rollovers were treated differently. That's a whole nother kettle of fish.
Exactly.
So wait, don't file now, tomorrow. Don't rush it in.
One such reason, just for example, for anyone who is as geeky as I am, or if there are any accountants out there, you'll notice that the tax return, the federal tax return, has changed. The actual form that our government uses has changed this year, 2020. I'm sorry. the operative base year, which is the 2020 tax return. The 2020 tax return numbers and line items and what they correspond to in your tax return are different than 2019's tax return. 2019's tax return was different than 2018. It's been a couple of years of changing the federal tax return. So each year, the Department of Education needs to internally change its systems because it has to coordinate differently to a tax return. That in and of itself, and what information it pulls through when you're doing the financial aid forms, et cetera, can be a little funky in the very, very, very beginning. It's kind of like going to a hospital with brand new residents July 1st, being under the knife. And no, I'm just kidding. Anyway, so you get my point.
All right. So, so that was one question. We got several questions on the Fafsa changes. I'm not going to address those other than to say that they don't take place this year. They're slated to take place for next year, for 2023/24. So that means kids who graduate 23. There is good reason to believe that that's going to be postponed another year, by the way, because the Department of Ed and a lot of colleges are kind of up in arms. There's a lot for them to change and get trained on and prepare for. So I'm going to table that discussion for a later time, in the interest of time here. Got a couple questions about student loan forgiveness. This is from someone named Joe. Uncle Joe? And it looks like it's going to happen in some way, shape, or form. But again, that's too early. It's probably going to be only student loans, not parent loans, only the federal loans. I don't even follow it day to day anymore because it just got too annoying. Whether it can be done by executive action or Congress has to pass it. I think Congress does not want it done by executive action. So
the only other thing I'll add, for right now, the student loan interest rate, as to all student loans, has been suspended on at least through January 2022.
Interest accrual.
The interest accrual on the unsubsidized loans.
Okay. All right, Stuart, how do we get more merit aid at a Suny school? That is pretty hard, if not impossible. Only a few SUNYs give merit aid. I think Albany is one of them. Binghamton is not. So it's very, very hard to do that, but you should always try. But there's no secrets to it. They just don't. A lot of state schools just don't have the money. That's the unfortunately, that's the obstacle. Okay, question from M. What are implications for financial aid for college years through 2 through 4 if your home that you're currently living in is deeded to a college student? So if you give the house to the college student, what happens with financial aid? Pearl, you want to take a crack at that one?
Sure. Well, it depends on the school, because if the Fafsa, if it is a school that requires only the Fafsa, then the primary residence and the value that one has in their primary residence is not part of the financial aid consideration and financial aid penalty and formula, et cetera, and so forth. If, on the other hand, it is a school that requires both the CSS profile and the Fafsa, the CSS profile will impugn a certain amount of penalty that from the equity that you have in your primary residence against you, and as if it is owned by the student, against that student, which is an even heftier penalty than that is put on the parents.
So that's a very specific question. Normally I wouldn't answer those or ask Pearl to answer those, but the reason I put it on here is for Pearl to tee it up for Pearl to be able to explain the difference in the financial aid applications, which she just did. It doesn't matter for my comments here whether it's in the parent's name or not, but your primary residence will count against you for about 300 or 400 colleges that require the CSS profile application, which is 200 to 300 questions. Most schools don't take that, but it tends to be the ones that do tend to be the colleges that have their own money, and they will penalize your primary residence in various degrees. Whereas the colleges that only require the FAFSA, which is the federal form, free application for federal student aid, those are exempt. The primary residence is exempt. So whether it's in the parent's name, like 99.9% of people, or not, same comments. Okay. Question from Thushari. Any tips for merit scholarships? The short tip is that you want to apply to colleges that want you. if you're a child, it's the colleges that are rolling out the red carpet to bribe you to come. So not the aspirational schools where you have to beg, borrow, and steal your way to get in. That's the best tip I can give. If you're in the top 10 to 20% of the cohort that's applying, you can look at last year's statistics, average, GPA, median SAT or so, and you're in the top 10 to 25%, I guess. That's you have a good shot if the school gives merit aid. Not every school does. Okay. Michelle, filing the FAFSA for my daughter's second year of college. Does FAFSA increase when college costs increase? So let me just make a quick comment, then we'll turn this over to you. We hear a lot of people talk about getting something from FAFSA or something. FAFSA is not an entity that decides money to give or not. It's an application. The college decides whether to give you money or not. So it's not like the FAFSA will increase or not. That's just a form. It's like a 1040 tax return. So now, does your award automatically increase as the colleges increase their costs?
Not really, unfortunately. The answer is no. But just perhaps what the questioner is really asking when they're saying,
Her name's Michelle.
Michelle, wondering what do you get from FAFSA, or what does the federal government, because that is what the FAFSA form application determines, is your eligibility for federal aid at a particular school. And just by distinction, the CSS profile determines your institutional eligibility at a particular school that has institutional aid to give. And that's why they're requiring both forms in that scenario. But unfortunately, no. Whatever the federal guidelines are, strict formula, asset and income, and a bunch of other factors that go into exactly what determines your number that the FAFSA determines in terms of your federal eligibility. But if the school itself increases its cost of attendance, unfortunately, that just means it's more expensive.
So just to add to that, so because the question brings up a lot of different facets. That's why I chose it to have Pearl and me answer this. For need-based aid, they consider the total cost of attendance less your expected family contribution, and what's left over is your financial need. So the total cost of attendance will, if that increases, in theory, if everything else stays the same, your expected family contribution, which is calculated by filing the FAFSA, then in theory, you'll be eligible for more money. However, in practice, just because you're eligible for, let's say, $40,000 does not mean that every college is going to award you $40,000. So a lot of schools, it's called gapping. They will offer you $25,000, and then you have a gap of $15,000. That is a really important point, because a lot of people are stunned every year. It's not going to be anyone in this session tonight, but a lot of people are stunned every year in March or April when they get their financial aid awards, and they think they should have gotten so much more money because they were eligible for a lot, because they have low income or some other reason. But the reality is that some schools are really, really generous, and that's only a handful, tiny handful. We got a question about this. It tends to be the oldest, most prestigious schools in the Northeast, or other schools scattered throughout the country with large endowments. By the way, I read you this, I think it was today or yesterday. Don't believe colleges if they're crying about having to cut costs or not having money for financial aid. I think this is going to be a pretty good year for financial aid. There's been a spate of articles recently about how college endowments are way up. The biggest colleges with $500 million or more had a median increase, I think, of 34% or 39% or something. So many schools are making a ton of money with their investments during coronavirus and all that. That being said, some schools are very generous with aid, some are not. And some will increase the award a little bit, but most will not as the years go on.
Lot of moving parts.
Yes, that are not reported by guidance counselors or anyone else you talk to.
Right.
Okay. Hugo, is there a legitimate way to reduce the EFC? Wait, are we doing the legitimate webinar?
Yes. As two licensed lawyers, yes, dear.
Do you have your license on you? Do you have your papers? Do you have your COVID papers?
It's come to that, has it?
Yeah. How many papers do you have these days? A legitimate way to reduce the EFC to receive financial aid if the parent's combined salary is $250,000. Yes, legitimate way number one, get fired. Legitimate way number two, no. So the reason I'm answering this question in my way, and there are other questions about income, is that there is actually no magic number that's published in the financial aid formulas that if you cross it, it's a ceiling that you won't get any money after that. We do have clients who do receive need-based aid who make more than $250,000. That's usually when they have more than one child in college at the same time. There could be other extenuating circumstances, but that is currently.
I'm resisting the urge. Okay, are we going to go there?
Well, we people with twins, we people with triplets,
yes,
and they make $250, $300, and they can absolutely qualify for need-based aid at the right schools, which tends to be the private colleges that have the largest endowments. A lot of times there are extenuating circumstances, even though you made a lot of money on the financial aid applications, which are 2 years behind.
So that is addressing. I just said to Wend. I hope I'm pronounced Wend or Wendy. Yeah. Wend, I think.
Let's go Wendy.
Wendy. You can let us know. So what happens if your current financial picture is substantially different than the 2020 income tax return?
Okay. Run, don't walk to your nearest Amazon friendly mobile device. We will make $1.72 on if you buy this. It covers all. You don't have to really. It covers all of the scenarios for you to be able to appeal an award based on these circumstances. And I don't know if you want to get into more than that.
No, but I just wanted to touch on when one's financial picture is currently different than the income tax year that we are confounded by in the financial aid application. Well, we are.
So let me ask you some questions.
We are tethered to. We must.
Let's go lightning round here. Okay.
Yeah.
I've got a kid graduating in 2022. What tax returns are they looking at?
2020.
Okay. Please, counselor. Let's say that I had a really good year in 2020 because you did your job, and in 2021 you rode your Peloton 900 days in a row, which I know is not possible, but just work with me, and our income therefore plummeted. But my financial aid award is based on 2020.
Mm-hmm.
What do I do?
We would appeal the financial aid award once it came out, which would be in the spring, likely, of 2022. And we would then have to appeal the award based on what would then be our current financial situation and prove it essentially with then current income situation, maybe an accountant's letter. That's where we go back to the book, and you can, basically cherry pick what your scenario is most similar to and kind of take a look at how we've handled it.
So getting back to the other point,
there is an opportunity to reconcile that.
So just for some basics, financial aid 101 here. So if you have someone graduating 2022, they would look at your tax returns from 2 years prior. The government calls it prior. We call it rigid prior. No, we don't. And if you have someone graduating 23 class, what number? What year? 2021. Yes, I could tell you're smart. However, when it comes to filling out the rest of the financial aid applications, the main one is the FAFSA. The other one is the CSS Profile. There could be others required by your colleges. They have a lot of questions about your savings. So are they looking at your savings from a particular moment in time, Peloton Pearl Lockwood?
Savings are true as of the day we file.
So if you have the ability,
assets are true as of the day.
If you have the ability or the wherewithal, or the inclination to shelter your financial aid savings, your savings from financial aid, which you can do legally and ethically, then you can do that at the last minute. It doesn't work for everyone at all, but that is another topic. Perhaps someone will ask me a question about that.
Just wanted to say one other thing.
Yes.
On the CSS profile. So if you are applying to a school that requires the CSS profile and you have a change of financial circumstances, and that would also be a place where you would mention that change of circumstances to give the financial aid committee a heads up as to what your circumstances are. And then, of course, once your financial aid award was actually issued after your student was admitted, that would be the time, that's when it would be ripe to make the appeal of the actual award that's been issued. Because theoretically, if a school offers you a free ride, you're not really appealing anything because that works out for you, right?
Right and ripe.
Right and ripe.
Yes.
Exactly.
Okay. A few questions about the 529. And the basic question, no matter how you slice it, is will it or affect eligibility for financial aid? The short answer is, for some people, it's not going to matter. For others, it will. It depends on everything else that comprises your financial aid profile, like your income and what schools you're applying to, etc. But disclaimer aside, the 529 does penalize you. It's considered a parent asset. In the financial aid formulas, it is penalized, but at a much lower, more benign rate. You will have to disclose the funds you have for all of your kids because it's a parent asset. And there's other types of 529s. I'm talking about the most common one. That being said, many private colleges, the ones that tend to require the CSS profile, they appear to sometimes treat the 529 as a child asset, which is penalized much more severely. What are you looking at?
The title of your book.
Oh. How to negotiate your crappy financial aid and merit aid offer. I thought you kept looking at me like you didn't
believe
you're trying to send me a signal instead of kicking me out of the table the way you normally do. So the 529 can be good, can be bad, can be friend, can be foe, but it does penalize you, and that's one of the sort of dirty little secrets that they don't tell you about when they're selling you the 529. It will penalize you. Just the issue is it may not be that much, but it could be. It depends on how much you have in it, and a few other factors. Okay, so we've already answered a few questions about balances, about both kids, 529s. So thank you, Terry, Diana, Susan, Evie. Okay, Nancy wants to know, how do I get more moolah? I'd say rob a bank. Okay.
No, Andy.
Tokai. Yeah, we should have a disclaimer for everything that comes out of my mouth. Toki or Tokai. Okay, with twins child support, do I list 100% total received in 2020 per kid per each kid's application, or do we split the amount in half? The question will be very specific about how much child support did you receive. The FAFSA will also ask you the number of children in your household and take stuff off your tax returns. It also asks you how many kids are going to college. So it's all taken care of. You will disclose the entire amount. Lawrence, Columbia Awards. That is not a question. Maybe you're asking, does Columbia give money? Columbia, like most Ivy League schools, is very, very generous, and they tend to meet 100% of demonstrated financial need. They require the CSS profile, so they will calculate your need differently than if you just did a FAFSA, much more invasive and complicated to do a CSS profile. Okay. Gary Heller. Hello, Gary. College advisor and attorney Gary Heller asking about the law change. So we're going to table that discussion. But he's asking a question about something that is probably the most controversial part of the law, of the prospective law change with the FAFSA, which is no longer helping parents who have multiple kids in college at the same time.
Yeah.
I really think in my heart of hearts, maybe I'm being naive, that that's not going to go through. I don't think that is going to change when the dust settles, either next year or 2 years from now, and certainly for colleges that require the CSS profile.
Right.
By the way, before I forget, so there's two main financial aid forms, the FAFSA and the CSS profile, and the profile is so much more a pain in the butt to do. Ask her. The FAFSA is going to become a lot more simple, and the colleges that currently don't require the CSS profile, we think a lot of them are going to now require a CSS profile, because that's why colleges that have their own money, they want to make sure that you really need their money, so they require much more disclosures. if the FAFSA gets streamlined a lot more, which is what's supposed to happen in 1 year, possibly 2 years, then we think a lot more colleges are going to require the CSS profile. And I also saw that they're coming out with a sort of a streamlined CSS profile for next year. That's in the works. So it always changes.
Changing it up.
Yeah. So sorry to interrupt you. Trying to interrupt me. What were you trying to say?
Next.
You interrupted me for that? Okay. Here we go. This is from Boris. Parents are separated, divorce is in progress. Neither has custody of the student. Is father's income taken into account? Pearl, you want to try to land that plane?
Sorry, I didn't hear it. I was answering online.
All right, you continue with that one. So, so the quick answer is that is another one of these potential changes. I'm going to talk to you about the rules right now. The custodial parent is the parent that's supposed to fill out the FAFSA. If you're applying to a FAFSA only school, that's what I'm talking about right now. The definition of custodial parent has nothing to do with your settlement agreement. It has only to do with where the kid resides. So if the child resides more than 50% of his time in the last 12 months with mom, she's a custodial parent. If you're applying to a college that requires a CSS profile, then the non-custodial parent information is also included, either a little bit or a lot bit, because they require what's now called the
non-custodial parent profile.
Yeah. So it depends on the
which is a mirror image of the custodial parent's financial. It's basically the exact same information is required of the custodial and non-custodial parent at schools that require both.
Okay. Question.
Those schools will not penalize the non-custodial parents' financial information as much as if it was a married couple, because there's an awareness that there are two households to support. However, it counts.
All right. Luciana, should I file FAFSA if I know we don't qualify for need-based aid? Probably want to take a crack at that one.
Well, if you are applying for admission to a school, that is a byproduct of demonstrating that you don't need any aid could help you in the admissions department, because you're a full pay.
It'll show financial strength.
It'll show financial strength, and that will help you admissions-wise, potentially.
Good. And you might be wrong. You might qualify. That happens a lot.
Right.
And things change too.
Right? Yes, and often there are many schools that will require you to file financial aid forms just to trigger the merit aid eligibility.
Yep.
NYU is one such school, for example.
Fordham, I think.
Yeah.
Another one. Yep.
So file just to be safe.
All right. Question from Lisa Siglag. Hello, Lisa. Nice to see you. What Northeast school gives the most merit? Yeah, it tends to be the most prestigious. Ivies, yep. The oldest schools, little Ivies, those tend to be the most generous. Okay. Garcia, what about international students? Her specific question is, what if we move to Bermuda? But does international matter? It doesn't matter if you are a U.S. citizen. You can still qualify for all the money, and there's a lot of money for international students if you were to renounce your citizenship. That was scary. You could have shut down the whole
Megillah. I know. Sorry.
Okay, here we go. Cynthia, can a student with an undocumented parent complete the CSS profile? Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely. Especially in today's day and age of generosity for less fortunate and undocumented. Okay. Bernadette, will you get busted if you don't list both guardians' financial info on the CSS? Yeah, you could. You could, if you're intentionally excluding something that they're asking you in any case, including your specific one. So we don't recommend it. Certainly not on the air. Charissa, how is a sure way to lower the EFC? My kid is extremely average. I'm sure he's very special in many ways. And we do not expect any merit scholarships. So the main ways to lower your EFC, again, EFC stands for expected family contribution. And look, I really have to update this, by the way. But this is another book that I just happen to have here, How to Pay Wholesale for College. I would read that. I would also look at Paying for College by Cal Chaney. He updates his every year, and it's much more comprehensive. It's more like a textbook as opposed to this. The main ways has to do with your savings, because that's the easiest. Income is the most important component in the financial aid formulas. If you have a good accountant who can, especially if you're self-employed, which we specialize in that for our clients, that's a good way to at least look at to lower your income, because that will have a much bigger effect on your expected family contribution. Assets held in the wrong places, like your kids' names or your names, those will penalize you anywhere from 5 to 25%, depending on whether it's parents or student assets. So you have to have a significant amount of money saved in the wrong places. But there are exempt assets in the financial aid system that don't count against you. And the ones we see the most frequently are insurance products, cash value life insurance, and annuities. But you have to be really careful about all this stuff. This is just a general answer, recovering attorney disclaimer. Thank you. Pearl, anything to add on that before I zip along here?
Nope, zip away.
Okay. Okay, so a lot of questions about how much do I make? I mean, how much is too much or whatever. And merit aid, I answered those before. If the NPC shows full pay, I think net price calculator, nice, shows full that to pay full in full. Do I need to check yes for financial aid question on Common App so my child can get federal loan? Interesting. So the Common application has a box. Are you interested in applying for need-based aid? If you check no, but still submit your financial aid applications, they're either going to ask you, did you mean to check no? Or they're going to see financial strength if you don't qualify. But I don't think you will be able to, will they still offer you the loans?
Yes.
Okay. So I would probably say
the prerequisite to obtaining loans is filing the Fafsa. If you fail to file the Fafsa, you're not going, and potentially, and you wait so long to then file a Fafsa and try to obtain a loan, you could be potentially too late in a particular year to try to retroactively get a loan. That
you have until June of the following year.
Exactly,
right?
But yes.
I was just going to say, but sometimes what colleges will do is they'll cancel. They'll ask you, did you mean to apply for aid? We have your FAFSA, but you said no in the Common application. And you could, if you say by mistake, oh no, I didn't mean to, sometimes they will cancel out your FAFSA.
To preserve your ability to get a loan, you're right, you should file the forms.
Okay. And I would probably check no on the Common app,
Common app,
unless they ask you specifically, is this a mistake?
Right.
Yeah. Just make sure that you still want to be considered for loans. Hope that was clear. More questions on income.
We have a lot of questions that piled up in our hopper.
Okay. Let me see the first come, first serve, Pearl. Okay. Can FAFSA info be transferred into a CSS profile?
No. However, as long as we brought that up.
Well, part two would nuance different answers between FAFSA and CSS profile, create red flags.
Yes. Thank you.
Is that what you're going to ask?
Right. That is exactly what I was going to say. Make sure that the information that is the same as between the two is the same as between the two. Because if it's not, obviously, as the questioner properly asked or stated, that would give rise to red flags, and even but then it just creates more scrutiny, etc., and so forth, which is unwanted often.
I like the attention personally, but you may not, especially if it results in less money.
Right.
Janine, how difficult is FAFSA to fill out? That is a loaded question. I'm going to say, because I don't fill them out, it's actually pretty easy. However,
what goes behind your answers, less
well,
so.
It's understanding, and particularly if your school requires more than just the FAFSA. So it can be very easy, but it might be deceptively easy.
Right. And here's what can happen. You could provide answers that don't make sense, let's say, that make mathematical sense in terms of what's been reported in your tax return, something you've said in your FAFSA that then will have an experienced financial aid officer who is fielding your financial aid application could see, wait a minute, they're saying this amount of assets but their tax return says this, that does not really jibe with one another. And then that could beg a verification and further scrutiny, et cetera, and so forth.
So that's the answer to the question. How easy is to fill out the FAFSA incorrectly? And it can be very easy to make mistakes on it. So
right. You can also include things that shouldn't be included, et cetera, and that can count against you.
Yeah. Okay. College advisor and sassy person in general, Luann Lee, says, just listening for the jokes. Thank you for your support. All right, let me just, we're almost done here with the pre-submitted questions. I want to just let people know that we are currently taking on, Pearl's currently taking on clients to help with taking care of this whole thing for you, doing all the financial aid applications. Because it's October, we have a coupon code to give you $150 off.
Spectacular something or other? No.
It's
okay.
October-surprise.
All right.
October-surprise. As in, it's like a political thing. The October surprise with a dash in the middle. Got it? Did you put that in? Yep. Nice work.
October surprise. Yes, good. Doesn't have to make it.
October surprise. I can't read that. Okay. So, Jane, is the parent age and how close they are to retirement considered? That is built in to the EFC calculation, the calculation of the expected family contribution. Age is one of those factors. And will having two in college at the same time, is that considered? Currently, yes. Slated apparently to no longer count, but I am skeptical as to whether that will actually be the case when they change the rules, which will either be 23, 24, or 1 year after that.
Right.
So that's either next year or 2 years from now. Okay. More income questions. Why fill out the FAFSA if you're not going to qualify? Here's one. Anna, is there an advantage to applying early action when it comes to merit scholarships in comparison to applying a regular decision? I will answer that one with gusto and verve. Colleges want you to think that they're going to run out of money. They have all sorts of implicit and explicit types of warnings, admonitions to get your forms in, but there's no statistical. If you look at the stats, it doesn't really help to apply early action, and no one can tell you that it helps you get money. So I think you should do it, just in the spirit of getting everything off your plate and done with. But I don't think it's going to help with either getting in or getting money. Okay, Tony Mangan. Hello, Tony. Tony Ian. What happens if two of my children have different financial info? I fill one out and a wonderful service does the other. She's a client.
Why don't you let that wonderful service handle both?
Yeah. That's the wrong question, Tony. All right.
We'll talk.
Lisa Solomani. Hello, Lisa. What are the top colleges to give the most financial aid? Again, that is, I've answered that before, but I just want to say it again. It's not the state universities. It's the colleges that have the most money, the largest endowments, generally the most prestigious, hardest to get into private colleges. Amy.
That's a good question.
Have you seen Going Merry's FAFSA Made Easy form? If so, what do you think? No, I haven't seen it. I've heard about it. It's probably just a spreadsheet that helps you, data input things. So I've seen stuff like that. Again, it's really more about understanding the rules, behind it. Okay.
It's like your tax return. It's probably mechanically easy to throw numbers in,
right.
But if you're not real sure about what numbers are supposed to be there.
I heard a really good analogy, by the way. I was on a webinar listening to Cal Chaney, who's written a book that's been around for 20-something years, updated each year. And he said something like, if you're going to use a tax return analogy, it's like filing a tax return. When you file, to all these colleges. If you file to 12 to 15 colleges, it's like you're filing taxes to 12 to 15 countries because they're going to have all the different regulations and rules.
That
and
is
all
a
that.
great analogy.
Yeah,
That
I
is
like
true.
Yeah.
That is true. They do it differently from one another.
Yeah.
So that's the other thing. When you're going through this process, don't become alarmed when one school starts asking you for a ton of information related to financial aid and another school stays silent. It is not to be inferred from that the school that's silent isn't interested, or necessarily that the school that's asking you for so much is. It is simply different processes, and that's it. Leave it there.
All right, got a few more before we go to the recent questions. These are the pre-submitted questions that I am working through here. Question from Naomi: if you own rental property, what do you do? Well, make sure you have good tenants. Make sure the toilet's flush. Those are assets that count against you in the financial aid formulas.
And in both the Fafsa and the CSS profile. Whereas I was saying earlier, your Fafsa does not take your primary residence and count that against you, but whereas your investment property does count against you on the Fafsa and the CSS profile.
You want to try to minimize the amount of equity that you show in that property. So that could be, coming up with a low but realistic value, fair market value, right? It's got to be defensible. Sometimes people take out mortgages, higher mortgage balances to reduce the equity. Obviously, you've got to look at all the factors, not just the financial aid
and the cost of making those choices. Exactly.
Deborah Levinson: is a trust fund in the student's name a student asset if the parent is a trustee?
Yes.
What if the child cannot touch the money until they're 28 years old?
Yes. Still yes.
But I would appeal that. I would say, even though this is an asset that counts against us, the reality is we can't touch it. It's not a resource we can use to pay for college. Right. Okay. Question from Aika: what is the FAFSA? FAFSA is the main federal financial aid form, free application for federal student aid. FAFSA, some people call it FAFSA or FAFSA, and they have speech impediments.
No, they are incorrect.
Oh.
But it is an acronym nonetheless, and it is an application that determines your eligibility for federal aid at the college
level. A lot of acronyms in this crazy world. EFC, FAFSA, FSAID.
Yes.
I'll stop there. Jay, do the CSS profile or individual schools ask for your bank statements when calculating an asset?
So, in about 60% of cases, there can be what is called an income or an asset verification, meaning you submit your financial aid forms, and some financial aid office at some school you have submitted to, either for no reason at all, because there is a random check, or there is something in your application that gives rise to further questioning, whether it be on the asset side or the income side. Let me give you an example. If you are saying you have X amount of assets on your financial aid forms, and your tax return seems to indicate on the dividend interest line that you have a certain amount of dividend interest that would have sourced from a certain size asset that is different than what you are putting in your financial aid form, that is an example of where your income where your assets would be verified, because it's not matching up with what your income tax said as to what assets you had. So then in that case, and I've seen it and we've had to provide it in scenarios, the school is going to specifically ask for what it wants to satisfy it on that subject. So yes, in that scenario, they can ask for mortgage statements, current mortgage statements as to value of property. They could ask for bank statements, stock statements, anything, that is at the time
Crypto.
of the filing. It can ask for anything it wants as long as you're asking for money. But that's yes. The answer is under all scenarios, no. But under some scenarios, Sometimes, yes.
When you file, the answer is no, but
Right.
but after you file, they may ask for them. Okay, this is an interesting question, but I think it's timely. From Michelle Littman, with a very recent name change, is it okay to use the new name of the students, or will that cause problems?
Okay, so
I would not change it on the FAFSA
Yes.
unless other stuff's changed.
right here is when your FSA ID so the FSA ID is similar to a social security number. Every individual has their own individual FSA ID username and password.
Well, you have to get it though.
And you obtain it in the first place because it is linked to one's legal name spelling on a tax return, their social security number, and their date of birth. When one applies,
and student gets one, and one of the parents must get one.
Yes, in order to complete and file electronic. Yes,
another
FAFSA.
acronym. So this is not
True.
FAFSA. This is the FSA ID, which you sign the FAFSA with.
Correct. That FSA ID that matches the name that is on the legal, birth certificate, tax return, the social security number, and the birth date. Those three things are going to be verified with the Social Security Administration when one applies for their FSA ID. If it doesn't match, it will fail and won't be able to be used. It's going to have to match what is actually legally there. So when you are then applying and putting this information in your financial aid forms, if it doesn't match again because you've put a different name that doesn't match the one you obtain the FSA ID with, you're going to have a problem once again, and it is going to cause a ripple effect of confusion and problems potentially for the student, which is unwanted. If at some point the student has changed the student's name, then that student, there's certainly place, I know in the Common App, the likes to be known as, et cetera, and so forth, and or can certainly do so legally so that it can take legal effect so that you don't have to have this confusion. But I wouldn't recommend it just because it can come back and bite the student in the proverbial, you know what.
Yeah, we call that a cluster FAFSA.
Yeah.
So
that's what we call it.
Yeah, any new wrinkles that you introduce are possibly going to cause severe pain and frustration, because dealing with financial aid, the Department of Education, FAFSA support, whatever, sometimes you get lucky and you have someone who's competent. Other times it's like going to DMV. So
calling your insurance company. Yeah, that kind of fun.
Right. Yeah.
Kind of like a root canal.
Yeah. All right. I'm done with the pre-submitted questions
right.
that I wanted to answer. So do you want to take a stab at the other ones?
Sure. So how do we pull those up neatly for us to view?
No.
Just go right.
Yeah. You're in charge of that.
All right.
I don't know.
Oh, I am. No, but all right. How do we do it by the? I think we should do it this way in order of appearance. Okay. Do you want me to read the questions and then we can?
Yeah. And you decide who answers.
All right. Question from Lawrence. I have a junior at a university now and a high school senior. Do I file 2 FAFSAs or do I do one per kid? The answer is each student.
Wait, isn't that both 2? 2 FAFSAs or 1 per kid? Is that a
yes,
trick question?
The answer is yes. Yes, on both. You file 1 FAFSA per student. So if you have 2 kids in college at the same time, you will be filing 2 different FAFSAs, 1 for each. That was
like an SAT question, trying to trick us.
Okay.
Same.
2
students
Lawrence,
are traveling in trains at opposite directions. Okay.
One going at a rate of
yes.
Okay. My daughter wants to do early decision at Columbia. I'm a bit scared about the price tag. What if they say I can afford it, but it's a stretch? Can we back out? Andy.
The answer is you won't hear this from your guidance counselor because they are afraid of this scenario.
Different agendas. Helping.
That's so helpful. but isn't she cute, ladies and gentlemen?
All right.
So the actual early decision agreement has it's not even buried in fine print. It's a line right there that says, in effect, if you apply early decision and we admit you're coming unless you decide that the financial aid award is not adequate.
Who decides?
So
you decide.
Helping. So you actually can get out without any repercussions. No one can force anyone to pay full price for college. In practice, when you get especially with kids, when they work so hard and they get their applications in and they, all the essays and all the test prep and all that junk, and then they finally get back the word they got into the dream school, pretty unlikely that you're going to back out because of emotional reasons. But you can't legally. Yeah. It's not a contract because kids can't sign contracts that they're not the age of majority. The reason you'll never hear from your guidance counselor is because they don't want to taint next year's crop of kids who might apply to Columbia.
Yep. Which
is kind of silly, but I'm not a guidance counselor.
But it's something you got to know.
Yep.
Rena, can I just start the form October 1st and finish it later? Yes, you can do that.
Smart.
Yep, sure. Ayanka, if you have to file both the FAFSA and the profile in order to keep the asset value the same and eliminate confusion, do you file both forms on the same day or close together? And can I file financial aid forms before college applications are actually submitted? Great question. The first question, the answer is yes. I do recommend filing the CSS and the FAFSA on or about the same day because those two forms should be consistent with one another. And can you file the financial aid forms before the college applications? Yes. Make sure they're two separate animals. Financial aid forms must adhere to the financial aid application deadlines. You can file those immediately. And if they never match up with an application for admission, it will simply purge. No harm, no foul. But this way you preserve your ability to seek aid at that school. Anyway, okay.
By the way, if you later decide to apply to other colleges for admission, you will also need to submit the FAFSA and the CSS profile to those colleges. They don't automatically get them. Little important tip, which I know chances are at least one person on this call would mess that up. So now you won't.
Okay. Bernadette, this sounds like a very specific question, but I will ask it. You can be the judge. Hi, my mom has claimed my niece, but we are both guardians. I was added so she could attend a bedded school. Do I have to include my financials? Mine are complicated because I'm in the process of a divorce. Sounds very specific.
Aren't guardians included?
Yes.
Yes. Short answer is yes, but that's something you'd appeal.
Linda, my child is a freshman now, and we got a good financial aid package. Can we expect the same one for the next year if the FAFSA info is basically the same?
In most cases, yes. Some schools have a little nasty habit of pulling money away. So it really depends on the school. Some have a reputation for doing so. Most do not. So I would hope that it would be roughly the same. And if it's not, you appeal it.
Evie, what if my senior wants to apply to more than 10 schools? Should I leave the state schools off the FAFSA since they don't have merit aid? Okay. My guess is you've tinkered around with the FAFSA itself because when you apply, you probably notice that you cannot add more than 10 schools at a time to the FAFSA. That doesn't mean that you are limited to only applying to 10 schools, period. So no, any schools that you are, so I'll just explain what you do. Any schools that you are applying for admission to, you should absolutely make sure to submit the financial aid forms. If you are applying to more than 10 schools, then what you need to do is submit to the first 10 schools in order of priority financial aid deadline. And then once those initial schools have completed processing, you're going to go back into your already filed FAFSA and submit to your additional schools. You have to remove your old schools and add the new schools. A lot of moving parts, but that's how you accomplish that. You don't just not apply to certain schools.
Nice.
Joe, how do you find a school that wants my child?
Most schools are pretty easy to get into, so it's not like you have to stumble across them. But you've got to do some research to figure out, what types of kids those schools are looking for, not just their academic profile, but that's certainly important. But there's only about 90 colleges in the country that accept 50% or less students, and there's about 4,000 total colleges. So the vast majority are very easy to get into. So it's not really hard to do that. The bigger question is how do you find a school that's right for you? And that's a whole other discussion. We have a whole methodology for that.
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, Rena, what are a few legal examples of ways to shelter savings? Although I think we've touched this.
Well, we didn't do the illegal ones. She wants the legal ones?
Knock it off.
Yeah. The most common are insurance products and annuities, but there are others, but those are the two most common products. Not right for everyone. I'm like twitching if I don't say that.
Barbara didn't see what we should be getting off Amazon. Can you put it in the chat?
Sure, Babs. How to negotiate your crappy financial aid and merit aid offer.
Okay.
It's massive. And just search Andy Lockwood on Amazon.
Right. Lawrence, my son is a junior. His dad had the 529. I am the one filing the FAFSA because we are divorced. What do I tell about the 529? I am so confused.
Yeah. That would not go on the FAFSA.
Nope, it would not.
Yeah.
Because
neither would a grandparent, by the way.
Right.
If the grandparent or the ex owns the 529.
But if you owned it, then it would.
Yeah.
If you, the custodial parent, owned it, it would. Because you don't, then no, it stays off the FAFSA.
That's the short answer in the
yes.
Because we're at the top of the hour here, so we want to wrap this up.
Lawrence, when does early decision get decided? It varies based on the school. You got to look up your own school's deadlines.
Yeah, December 1 or December 15th are the two most popular.
Right. Evie, but no way to reconcile before financial information gets to the schools. You mean different information? Different information, meaning if your financial circumstances are different now than they were in 2020. On schools that accept the CSS profile, there is a special circumstances section where you can include such an explanation at that time. Short. Don't go right. Don't plead your whole case there.
Well,
give them an idea.
Most of the time, it's just ignored, and you're going to appeal it. So
anyway.
don't expect them to give that much weight.
Right. Wendy. Oh, I assume it's Wendy. So wait until your kid is admitted and we get the package and then appeal to the college directly. Yes. Kara, what if one parent has been unemployed for the past 6 months? That is a special circumstances that would be considered. Yes.
Yeah.
And on the FAFSA, if you were currently unemployed, you would indicate that you are a dislocated worker. Jay, do you have to submit bank statements for the CSS to individual colleges at the time of filing? We've already answered that.
The answer is no.
Linda, for FAFSA, what are non-reportable assets other than retirement assets, annuities, and value of home? Any type of trust or non-reportable assets? Life insurance is another one. What if I'm in the middle of a divorce? Then you would be separated, and that status is how you would go in as on the FAFSA. And on the CSS profile. And if you are the custodial parent, only your information would be provided. So that's the answer on that one. Anna, do children's savings bonds count against you? Yes, they count against the student. Evie, how would you report tuition for a younger special needs sibling in a private therapeutic high school? If it's not college tuition, do they consider it? Again, yes, not on the FAFSA, but yes, that also would go in a special circumstances explanation. In fact, there are checkboxes above that special circumstances writing section that have boxes you can check, one of which includes exceptional medical expenses, private schools. That's another one. Loss of income, loss of employment, job employment, non-recurring income, plenty of different options. COVID is another one.
So we know, and financial aid officers know how expensive those institutions are, and these financial aid. When you look at it from the 30,000-foot view, these financial aid applications are all about your resources or your ability to pay for college. So if something detracts or sucks resources away from paying for college, like a therapeutic boarding school, which is like paying for college, basically, that's going to be considered either by the forms or definitely on appeal. Yeah.
Tashari, how would you know if you qualify for need-based aid before filing? Well, each school's site has its own net price calculator on it, which bears in mind how they figure out your financial aid, but it'll ask you a bunch of questions about your income, your assets, number of kids, et cetera, and so forth. And it will give you a loose understanding of what it might cost for you to send your kid to school there.
So just to chime in,
caution.
Yeah, they're not all the same.
Yeah.
Some ask more questions than others, but I would still do that. And then if they give you an estimate that's fairly good, and then when you get the real award several months later, it doesn't resemble the estimate, that's a source of appeal also. It's also, they're going to say it's garbage in, garbage out. We don't promise anything, blah, blah, blah. But that's a very common scenario.
Julie, if you include on the application that you do not need aid, do you still complete the CSS and Fafsa? I was confused about the response.
So let me do that one.
Okay.
I think I messed that one up. I would say on the Common App, no, I don't want money. And then I would still submit the financial aid applications, period.
Because it helps you show financial strength. It will help you for admission. It also may trigger merit analysis. Okay. Michelle Littman, and just do the CSS. No, I wasn't suggesting that she's asking, should I really not do the FAFSA tomorrow? I'm just saying, like, wait a couple days, because there really is no advantage to filing it tomorrow, October 1st, versus next week, October 7th. Happy anniversary. Because
what? Again?
Because just in the event that there's just a day or two of computer glitchy stuff.
Sometimes it's more than a day or two, by the way. Yeah.
I personally like to wait till the second week. There is no advantage to doing it in October, the first week versus the third week. It is all well before any deadline. And they're not going to look at it really a minute before they're ready to look at it anyhow. I'd rather it just be a well-oiled working machine by the time I file my forms. So,
by the way, she's the same way too. She would want to do it October 1st because she's that neurotic.
Right.
But
I've watched
it could be
what's
okay.
happened
It could be okay.
in years past with these funny rollouts.
Yeah.
We live in an imperfect system, folks. I hate to break it to you. I don't know if you've noticed.
She hates that. Yeah.
Anyway, but
she never mentions that.
I would recommend that you do the FAFSA and the CSS, file them at the same time, maintain their consistency between them. Linda, are any type of trusts, special needs, etc., a non-reportable asset on the FAFSA?
No, they're all reported,
but
explainable.
Susan, I heard current students are getting additional FAFSA COVID money. Have you heard about this?
Last year there was, I don't think this year is going to happen, but last year there was a couple reductions, right? $1,000 here and there. Yep.
Barbara, does participating in the financial aid warrior cover filing for all 4 years or just the first year?
The way it's structured is there's an initial deposit and then a monthly support membership that you can cancel at any time. But anyone who stays in that monthly membership then has, as long as they want, every other year's worth of forms filed,
because and loan paperwork
and support without having to do the $2,500 upfront deposit. And there's a coupon code here too. October-surprise.
Meg, some schools' merit scholarship deadlines are the EA deadline. Yes, that's right. But what I was suggesting is the application for admission deadline is different from the financial aid deadline and or merit.
There's other deadlines too. Yeah, you're right.
Susan, can you tell another school how much money another school offered to see if they match?
Do that every year,
sure do.
All the time.
Yep.
And it works a lot. Not all. I don't have a magic wand, but it works a lot of times.
Hugo, I have a sole proprietorship LLC. Do I have to include my business bank balances in the FAFSA and CSS profile? No.
Nope. Business value only, and that's usually zero.
On the CSS profile, there will be other questions asked about your businesses that you actively participate in, but the bank balances of your business or farm are not included.
But they may ask for a business supplement, which will include a balance sheet, so that'll have all of your assets in the business at one point at year end.
Yes, but the assets of your business are not something that should be considered as a resource to pay for college, not proper. Luciana, does the financial aid, including merit, is informed at the same time of acceptance or could come in later? So typically what happens is in the admissions letter, if it is a school that has merit money to award, there is often a sentence or two about an upcoming merit award it intends to give you. It'll often say something like, congratulations, welcome to such and such university. We are pleased to award you the blah, blah, blah Presidential Merit Award, which is $15,000 each year for a total of $60,000 a year of merit money. So that would be where they're sort of giving you the heads up about the merit money they are offering you. And then subsequently, you will also get a financial aid package that will include that merit award that's offered on a line item in with other financial aid awards that are all listed that cobble together, which include loans, cobble together to be your financial aid package and equal the cost of attendance. But that comes after your admissions letter, which will include the merit award, likely if you're at a school that has it. But sometimes it doesn't. Because why? Because it's like different countries, as Andy was saying before, all schools have different processes. Okay.
A lot of times the need-based award is weeks after.
Akimi, if we can pay all in cash, we don't need FAFSA. Right.
No, you don't need to, but you may want to demonstrate your financial strength. That's
right. Yeah. Because you're signaling them, even though it's used for one purpose, you are signaling them about a different purpose.
And you might be more likely to get merit aid also. Longer discussion.
Yeah.
Not for tonight. We're wrapping up.
Anju. Do they factor in monies in brokerage accounts or retirement accounts? Brokerage accounts, yes. Retirement accounts, no. Although they ask you for your retirement totals on the CSS profile, but we have not really in practice see them count it against you in a penalty. Anna, do colleges expect you to use your retirement accounts to pay, and can you appeal that? The answer is they don't. And so they don't. So there's nothing really to appeal. Are annuities exempt?
Yes, on the FAFSA entirely. On the CSS profile, partially. Retirement annuities or qualified annuities, those are same thing, different terms. Those are exempt. Non-qualified, non-retirement annuities are not exempt. Next question.
Okay. Well, that's all I have here, but I see there are some here. No, there's no. I do see what other.
It's the same.
No. There's one more. Okay. So how do I know?
Last call.
How do I know if the 10 schools have processed? How can I? Okay. So if you try to go back into your FAFSA.
Not everyone understands the question.
Oh, sorry. How do I know when the 10 schools I file the FAFSA to have processed so that I can add additional schools? Okay. It takes about 1 to 3 days after one submits the FAFSA for those initial 10 schools to complete processing. If you log in prior to the time that it says completed processing, it will say still processing. You're not going to be able to do anything to it. And you're going to say, oh my God, I can't do it. I can't add them.
Literally what she said.
Well, you might panic because you're going to say, like, I can't get it. It's not working.
It's like Lucille Ball on the
the chocolate line, the chocolate assembly line. Yeah. Anyway, you just need to wait. If it's not a day, if it's not 3, eventually it will say 6, completed processing. And then you can go back in. You can say view submission history. And then you'd have to say, actually, make FAFSA corrections. Even though you're just adding schools, the Department of Education, in its infinite wisdom, likes to call your additional schools adding a correction, as if there was some implicit mistake in the fact that they don't allow you to add more than 10 schools at a time. And do not be alarmed when you submit that next batch of schools. The confirmation that you will receive will say a correction has been made to your FAFSA, which is possibly going to make the reader think, what did I do wrong? Do I have to fix something?
They're shaming me.
Anyway, that's how you do it.
All right. Anything else? We wrap up here?
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Well, there's.
Okay.
Yeah, we look good.
You look great. All right, guys. Well, thanks for spending time with us. I know you had other things to do, potentially conflicting, and I gave this last minute sort of notice. So it was great that we had 70 or 80 people show up. If you need us for anything, you can see the resource that we posted right here if you want help with your financial aid applications. And, thanks for spreading the word. And Pearl, any closing comments? Should everyone be panicking tomorrow?
Don't panic. Don't take a breath. If it's nice out, go enjoy the beautiful weather tomorrow. Don't do the FAFSA tomorrow. It's not necessary.
So we're playing golf.
Is that what you call it?
We're playing golf tomorrow, and then we have a firm dinner.
I know.
So we have a full day tomorrow.
Yes.
Thanks, guys. Have a good night.
Take care.